So, hi folks, Kari Anderson talking to you from partly sunny and lots of snowy Tetonia, Idaho right now. I'm so happy that you are taking the time out of your day, because I know there's probably 17 hot things that you need to be working on right now, to talk about engaging donors virtually and actually making the ask, because so many questions have come in about, oh my heavens, should I be talking to donors right now about money? Isn't that insensitive? Well, we're going to demystify that and a whole other bag of tricks in a second. For those of you I haven't had the chance to meet, and there's a lot of you that I haven't on the call, just a couple quick pieces about me. I am officially now an Idahoan because we purchased a home in Tetonia in July last year, though I am a Montana native. I have been all of you for, about 22 years. I've served as a executive director or a development director for 7 nonprofits in Washington State and in Colorado. I've worked for very large national nonprofits as well as very small startups. And for the last 5 years, I've owned a consulting company, which tagline is building up nonprofits from the inside out. And that probably isn't more relevant than it is on March 26th, 2020. So I always, and Evan knows this, I always refer to myself as staff because I have been you for so long. And just know, just out of the gate here, I just have so much empathy for the work that you guys are doing right now. I have availed myself to help in whatever way I possibly can. And so just consider this part one. You'll get at the end of the call a way to be able to get a hold of me, whether that's my cell or a special link to my calendar. I'm in this with you guys for the long haul. And so whatever I can do to make sure you have resources to be able to help navigate whatever our new normal might be, you've got me, and there's not a billable hour on that. So I just want to make sure you guys know you have support. So with regard to housekeeping, we've set up the webinar on purpose, most unfortunately, so I can't see you. I'm kind of like a cat with a laser pointer. If I can see you, I get distracted. And that's just really not a pretty look for all of us. So I can't see you, though you can see me, but I can see your hands pop up, right? And I can see the questions. So the way that this will work today is if you've got a question, hit me in the Q&A. After each of the subsets on this, I'll stop and I'll ask for more questions and I'll answer the ones that are in the queue. And at the end of the webinar, I'll answer additional questions that come in. There are going to be times that I ask you to raise your hand on things because that will give me a gauge as to how much time I should spend on a topic. So that's just kind of the lay of the land with regard to housekeeping. So here we go. First couple little pieces here, and this is where I get to see whether my tech is any better than it was yesterday. Let's go through the agenda and what that looks like. Here we go, me and tech, not such a good idea. So we're gonna do a quick reality check, and this is where I want you to be thinking of the following. How many of you are pretty significantly concerned about what the current state of affairs is going to do to individual giving? Now's the chance for you to raise your hand. And just a heads up, if you're not raising your hand, you're lying. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Or you haven't looked at your financials. Okay, so I think everyone on the call is there, okay? Don't worry, we have tools for you. Thank you all for playing along, right? Yeah, this is a biggie, right? And we don't know what the stock market's going to do. We don't know how people are going to reprioritize how they make decisions about philanthropy. Right? We don't know any of that. But what we do know is that fund development best practices have not been flushed down the toilet, right? So that is a first grounding piece for us, is that how we have raised funds before is still going to work. We're just going to use a couple different tactics to do it, right? And they do involve humans. I just want to make sure that that's out there. We're going to also leave today with what you can do now, whether you have a direct acquisition program, whether you have annual giving, whether you have major gifts, whether you have capital projects going on, or whether you have a major gift program that you need to be able to steward in conjunction with planned giving. So those, that's how we're going to work through today. If there are additional pieces that we want to discuss, this is really your call, right? So you can throw it up into the, not literally, right? Figuratively throw it up into the Q&A, right? So we have to start here. Some of you might have been on the call yesterday. I'm going to beat this as long as we possibly can beat it. This is what I mean, Okay. So this is the order that we have to handle things in. For those of you who are the leaders in your office, I'm going to be talking to you right here, right? Because you're the bosses in the office. We have to take care of our people first, right? Sometimes you're the person because it's a staff of one, right? So self-care for me means mind, body, soul. I was just on a call with a client before I hopped in onto this today, and I will tell you, and Evan knows this because I've had to tell on myself a couple times, the last 3 years of my consulting practice, I've not been great with this, right? I'm a helper by nature. And I'm a fixer for sure. That's just what I do. And it is so easy for me just when things are normal to say, hey, I'm not working out today because I've got this project I need to work on, or I'm not reading that book today because I have this thing. And because I really love this sector and because I really love the work that I do with all of you, that's a really easy compromise for me to make. And I had to look myself in the mirror on March, let's see, I got home from my trip on March 13th when the world had started to implode. And so I had to look myself in the mirror on March 16th and say, hey, in order for me to be helpful for all y'all, I have to set some different boundaries for myself right now, right? Like I have to work out, I have to get outside, I need to do things that feed my soul. And in order for me not to gain 25 pounds during all of this and bake all the time, for me, that's reading, right? So self-care, this is a big deal. And I hate that the whole self-care thing is kind of cliche, but it's a big stinking deal right now, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of the donors, right? And so here's what I mean by taking care of donors. We actually have to start reaching out to them via phone, right? Remember that I don't have my phone here. It's plugged in another room so it doesn't distract me. But we actually have to pick up the phone and talk to our donors about how their health is, right? How their safety is, how their security is. This phone call isn't making an ask, right? This phone call is not hey, let's pivot the conversation to talk about money. This is asking them how they are doing. And when we have done that, we are in a better position to take care of our nonprofit organization, the spirit of your organization, which might feel kind of broken right now, right? The morale of your organization, we are all putting on a really, really, really good face right now. And man, morale is rough in some places, right? We just have to be able to address that. If we're able to address spirit and morale at our organization, then we can actually talk seriously about net revenues for our group and what we're going to do to impact those. So that's kind of first to do. If we haven't done that yet, that's first on the to-do list, because then we actually can talk pretty pragmatically about what have we learned from other national times of crisis. So a couple of you on the phone, or on my phone, my virtual phone, know-ish my age, because we've worked together for a bit, right? But this is where I get to just, throw it out there. I was working in the field during 9/11. And I was working in the field when we went through the 2008, crisis. Certainly there are some things that are similar, and there's a load that's different. But there were some truisms that we took from working through 9/11 and having to regroup and learn how to fundraise then. And there's certainly some truisms that come from our time working through crisis in 2008 moving forward. And they are the following. Our job is to stay calm. That's hard, right? But our job is to stay calm through this. This is going to pass eventually. I do not have a crystal ball that is remotely clear as to when that's going to be, but our job is to be calm, even if we got to fake it. Like that's our job. Donors tend to engage more with organizations that have a plan, right? So the calming piece is really important for them. We can't ever assume on any given Sunday, right? But certainly today, we cannot assume that donors won't give. Shame on us, right? That is not our decision to make. So we're just gonna stop that, right? Our job is to stay the course. So if you have a plan, right, you're going to stick with your plan. How we deliver on some of the plan might look different because of social distancing or shelter in place or technology, right? But if you actually have a plan as to how we're gonna raise our revenue, we're going to stick with that, right? Again, we have some structure to be able to work through this. What is going to change is the frequency in that you review revenue goals and your revenue reports, right? Some of you, hopefully only 2 on the call, right? Some of you might have boards that really don't pay a lot of attention to your financials at board meetings. Maybe you as the executive director, maybe don't pay as much of attention as we should because you like to dabble in whatever that is, right? Program, advocacy, whatever that might be. We got to get really real with where the money is, because the more often we look at our financials and our revenue projections, we're able to pivot more quickly, and we're able to have a real-time message for donors as to what our need is, right? So we just have to manage our time differently and manage those reports. The last thing, okay, this is a question, get ready with your question button. How many of you actually have a major gift program in place right now? Please raise your hand. Gabriel, he's back. Love it. Good, good. Good job, Jessica. Good to see you. Okay, good. Nice job, kids. Okay, so for those of you who have not raised your hand, guess what? You're starting it, right? Someone asked the question yesterday, oh my heavens, how do I possibly have time to start a giving program when I have all this other stuff? Folks, this is the time, right? Because it's going to take time to get a gift program in place and having people give. But if we don't start to put in the work in the little extra time we have now, it is never going to manifest, right? Same thing with a plan giving program. Those are lessons that have replicated, right? This isn't just a brand new idea on March 26, 2020. It's, we have gone through areas of crisis and recession before in the United States. All of these things were truisms. All of them worked, so we're going to use them now, right, to our advantage. So a couple things, right, as we look into, what might our new normal look like? And where do we want to go as an organization? So if we are looking at what a healthy nonprofit looks like, and this doesn't matter to me whether you're small, right, with maybe you have a budget of $100,000 or less. Maybe you're the American Heart Association, right, with net revenues of over $1 billion. It doesn't matter to me what your scale is. A healthy nonprofit means that you have diversified revenue streams that end up looking like the following, right? You've got a donor acquisition program. All that is fancy talk for we have a pipeline to acquire new donors. Oftentimes those pipelines, sometimes that looks like buying lists, right, or acquiring lists or working with lists for larger organizations. But for most of us, and since I'm a special event freak, right, this is me, it comes through our special events, right? We acquire donors from being event attendees. So we all should have a methodology to, for general donor cultivation. Oftentimes that looks like a donor cultivation and stewardship calendar. And again, that's just fancy talk for, have we mapped out all of the opportunities to invite donors to engage in our work? And that doesn't mean giving, right then? It doesn't mean attending an event, especially not an event right now. It means learning more about your organization, right? So that's healthy. We want to have a specific stream of revenue that would be mid-level gifts. It's up to you to decide organizationally what a major gift is, what a mid-level gift is. For some organizations, it's major gifts or anything over $1,000. For some organizations, it's anything over 500, right? Again, I'm not telling you what that number needs to be. What matters is that you look at your revenues and you look at your donors to be able to say, so where do our top 20% of gifts fall? Is it over 500? Is it over 1,000? What is it, right? We ought to have planned gifts, right? So those are funds that donors have said we are going to be giving to you when we pass away. Sometimes they're called bequests. No, we can't count those into a budget, right? We don't know when someone is going to pass away. We certainly do not know if their will has been changed and if we're going to acquire those funds. But we'd be fools not to be making sure that we have a strategy to let donors know that this is a way for them to be able to contribute and support to the mission of your organization. And the last piece that goes along with this, and it's not for everyone, right? Because not all of us is in the middle of a capital campaign, but some of us might need capital gifts. And what that means is funds that are specifically restricted for a tangible item at your nonprofit, right? So that's healthy. And there's been a myriad of nonprofits that have asked me over the last couple, 3 weeks, so what should we be doing with our time right now, right? Since our time looks different, part of the planning is we have to look at this to say when we are able to have some settling of the market, when we're able to have some settling of our lives, that we have some of these structures in place so you can actually start targeting and creating strategies for each of these. And I'm happy to talk more offline about what that looks like. So I know that some of you have already messaged your story because I'm on your email list, right? And I've seen them. And I keep all that stuff because it's fun for me to read, but it also gives me some great case stories as to how this message worked and what the reaction was, right? So there's no doubt that all of you on the call have been impacted by this, right? I've been seeing the surveys that have been coming out from the 7 states that I work in, and what the impact looks like in terms of operations and program and staffing and, oh my heavens, our reserves, right? Like we all are impacted by this. But the story that you need to be able to tell, right, as we're getting ready to talk with donors, we've got to have a story that everyone's on board with, right? Board members all the way down through volunteers that are still engaged with you. And that is, are we a first degree impact organization or are we a second degree impact organization? And what that means is first degree is you have been significantly impacted by this. And the significant comes from you are frontline service for some of our most vulnerable either populations or service providers right now. So that could look like food scarcity. That could look like education. That could look like health. That could look like animal welfare. That could look like domestic violence, right? That could look like housing. That is not to minimize the rest of us in the room, right? Arts organizations, water quality, athletics, right? But no doubt, health and human services, that's a first degree impact. Second degree impact looks like museums, wildlife programs, right? All things that are important, but your story is going to be a little different than perhaps the first degree impact, right? Certainly, we have all been impacted by the decreased interactions that we have, whether that's people coming into your office, you be able to deliver programs, people coming in to take tours or and be involved with the zoo, right? We all have had a decreased interaction piece. We need to be able to talk about that to the donor very concretely. The opportunity is we now have the opportunity to increase the customization of how we message to our donors. So the story's first, right? We have to get together, if you haven't done it already, to prep your story because that unified message is going to be really important in order for you to message the story to your donors, right? So the deal is, right, if you are in one of those, let's back up for 1 second, first degree impact, right? First degree impact also could mean, good heavens, we do not have money to be here in 2 months, right? Like all of you has a different revenue story. All of you do. And I'm not here throwing stones at any of it. It's where are you with cash, right? So the piece that we need to remember, besides it's not our job to make the decision for the donor as to where they give or when they give or how they give, donors love to fund current acute needs, right? If you have a current and acute need, we got to tell them, right? No donor I know is clairvoyant. No donor I know is omnipotent, right? They need to know this. And so I'm going to give you 8 steps really quickly. You guys are going to get the deck for this as well, but I want to give you 8 steps in terms of if you need to send a message, and yes, you can do this via email or mail, right? These are the things, right? It cannot be more than a page long. There is no shooting the breeze, right? In your subject line, you have an urgent message to deliver, right? So the 8 steps look like this. Number 1, you are going to state the urgent message, why you are contacting them, right? Number two, you need to describe how the current situation with the virus and the economy is hurting those you serve, right, your beneficiaries, your cause, or your organization. Number three, you need to ask for a special gift to help your organization right now, right? And special gift means people, you need to do some math, right? So the math should look like, where's your cash position and how much money do you need? Divided by how many donors typically give to you during the course of a fiscal year. So some of you might be asking for $58. Some of you might be asking for 102. Don't know, right? Your job is to do the math. Ask for specific. Donors like specific. There should be a very short, think 2 to 3 to 4 sentences tops. A story to illustrate the need. It's number 4. Number 5 is showing how their gift of $58 or $102 helps to perfectly meet your need. Number 6, we got to remind them that this need is not the only need you have. We just, again, transparent, right? Authentic. Number 7, that this current reality is not in your budget. It's not, right? None of us knew in February this was coming. Not in our budget. And number 8 is a reminder for them to send the emergency gift now. I have been on the phone with way too many fundraisers and way too many executive directors in the last 10 days saying, we can't possibly send that. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, right? If, again, look to this slide. If you are being harmed, you need to share this. Our job is to share. They are adults. They will make a decision as to whether or not they can engage right now. That's the deal, right? So what else should we be doing, right? This is the one time that you are going to be able to send an email or be able to send a letter, because now we actually have to get on the phone, right? So these are some specific things that we can control. So acquisition. What I mean by that is I'm not having you go out and do what colleges and universities and hospital foundations and large organizations that actually have a donor acquisition department do, right? They have a budget, that's what they handle. I want you to be looking at those events that you just might have had to cancel and your guest lists, and be picking up the phone and talking with them about how they can assist you. When I say that traditional works, what I mean is the tools that we have traditionally used to engage donors, newsletters, right, of late, well, for years now, right, social media, handwritten note cards, right, all of the pieces and parts that are part of best practice donor acquisition and retention, those are still things we should do right now. And I'm guessing that a myriad of you have maybe some additional time on your hands because you're working at home, right? You don't have the other things that go on in an office that take up time, though I know many of you also have children at home, or a spouse or partner, or a roommate, or, oh, there's no doggy daycare, and now we have that. So I don't mean to, I don't even mean to dismiss what might be going on in your household, right? But we know we do have some extra time, so the traditional piece works. This is a time for you to be creative. And what I mean by that is in terms of how we are engaging our donors. So this is actually a fabulous opportunity to brainstorm with your entire team. Again, team of one, that's you, right? This could be your board. This could be involving other program or non-fund development staff in this conversation to be able to say, so how would we engage donors in different ways, in new ways, since we can't be physically present with them? Right? That's a great conversation to be able to have. And my little code here, right, DAF. So DAF stands for Donor Advised Funds. And so if we have donors that are currently giving that way, well, that's what we are going to be wanting to talk to them about. And if we don't know, now is a great time to be messaging about that, right? So some of the knee jerk has been, oh my heavens, the stock market. We can't possibly be asking because of what that has done to our donors' portfolios. So again, pause. We're not making that decision for them. Lots of very intelligent and sophisticated donors that have means, they have donor advised funds, right? They have put what they would like to contribute charitably and philanthropically in a fund that is protected from the stock market. That money is already there. So when we're having discussions with them about how they can support the organization, you'll be able to talk with them about that being a possibility, right? So again, we're not taking from household expenses. We're not taking from money that they can't use. That's already set aside. So this is where some of my wonderful fundraising folks get nervous, right? We need you to pick up the phone. So how many of you on the phone, here I am, right? Because I'm old. How many of you on the webinar have been working in this sector since the mid 90s? Please raise your fine little hands right now. I want to see whether there's anyone as old as me on the call. Yay, Rachel, winner. Okay, Rachel, I need to send you something. Okay, I'll figure that out. Anyway, so in the olden days, right? In the olden days, that's all we had, right? We could pick up the phone, but we also could make an in-person visit. And so what we have heard from lots of folks that are in your shoes right now is that people are actually answering their phone because it's a welcome distraction from what's going on in their life, right? Even if they don't answer the phone, our job is to be a good human. Again, think about back that hierarchy of needs. We need to be picking up the phone to ask how our donors are doing. And we also have to assume this is going to be our norm for a bit. And we can't just stop, right, for 2 weeks or 21 days or a month, right? Every state's different every day as to how we're going to do this. So our job is to communicate with donors, especially since we can't see them face to face. And phone is so much more authentic because we can actually hear inflection, right? You guys know the mess that sometimes happens with email and certainly with text, right? We take things the wrong way because some people write more directly than others. This is the time, right, to be on the phone because you can at least hear. And if not phone, right, if you know your people better, well, set up a Zoom call with them, right? Set up FaceTime or Skype or GoToMeeting or something where you can actually see their face. The biggie is we need to care for them just as much as we are caring for staff and for our volunteers. You still have critical needs, and it's the donor's place to decide how they're going to engage with you. With regard to the whole communication piece, this is your time to actually look at creating a plan if you haven't, or reviewing a plan if you have one for each of your larger donors. And for some of us, right, we refer to that as moves management. That might be a new term for some of you. All that means is for individuals who have invested in your organization and they've invested regularly and their gifts have ratcheted up, they may be within a major gift or a leadership gift category for your group, we ought to have a plan as to how we are taking care of that donor, right? When we are inviting them to things. And now what we're doing virtually with them, right? When we are actually going to make an ask, what the follow-up strategies are, right? Ideally, those are mapped out. Ideally, those are in your donor database, but now is the time to actually look at those and potentially freshen them. And the best way to start with that is actually picking up the phone to start a conversation, right? The same thing goes with your planned giving donors. We just don't not talk to them right now, right? They're donors of yours. They've just chosen to give at a different time in their lives. And so they should be communicated with just as anyone else who's giving a cash gift to your organization. Now, since we're taking a look at your donors, right, and your donor database, I have some interesting stats that I wanted to share with you that just came out. And boy, they're a little mind-blowing. I mean, and they shouldn't be, right? But we are so ingrained in some of how philanthropy has happened in the United States that it was really, I'll call it mind-bending to see this on paper, and frankly, this huge opportunity for us, right? So here are the stats. There are estimates that indicate that 2/3 of all wealth in the United States will be controlled by women by the year 2030. So in 10 years, 2/3 of the wealth is going to be controlled by women. Think about who's in your database right now. 73% of charitable donors currently are women. 73% of charitable donors in the world are women that are age 37 and older. Again, who's in your database that we should be looking at differently, Women are predicted to give more than 550 billion with a B to charities and philanthropic organizations in the next decade. So again, by 2030, $550 billion. Women give nearly twice as much as men in the United States. So as we are rethinking, and nowhere in there did I say give up on the guys, right? Nowhere did I say that. But as we're having to think about what our new norm may be, this isn't the time for tried and true. We certainly have best practices that we want to go ahead and continue to emulate and work through. But as we have to look at potentially some significant shaking up of how you do your fundraising work in your organization, we can't miss the opportunity to engage female philanthropists. So I would just be remiss if we didn't put that out there, right? Okay, so here's the deal with regard to what else could you or should you be doing right now with extra time? So quick raise hands. How many on the call? Brad Little said, hey, we're shut down, right? So how many on the call are actually working from home right now? Please raise your hand. Ding, 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 winner, chicken dinner, right? Here we are. Okay, we're all at home. Excellent. Hello, folks. Welcome to my home office. Here I am too, okay? So how many of you have kind of figured out what a work schedule looks like for you right now? Raise your hand, and kind of is fine. Look at you, because you're good fundraisers, right? We're more organized than the average Joes and Joettes. Nice work. Okay, good. So because of the fact that you've organized your time, right? And your time could be, hey, I've got a cubicle to work in. I know what my workout schedule looks like. I know what I need to do with self-care. I'm checking with my team at this point in time during the day. Here are some other pretty critical projects that we ought be working on now, so that when we, again, have defined, when do we get to go back to the office? When do we actually get to become engaged live and in person with our donors? What could we be doing now to better set the stage for them? So first is doing some research on donors. Quick show of hands, how many of you guys actually have donor databases or CRMs in your offices? This makes me feel much better. Yay, right? Okay, so some of you might have something that looks like foundation search, right? Or a donor prospecting tool that goes along with your CRM, right? Where you can send names out and they do some vetting for you. And for those of you that don't or haven't upgraded to that module, there's just, old school boots on the ground. Like, what do we know about our people? Where else are they giving? Where else are they engaged? These are fabulous questions for you to ask when you're calling your donors, right? And it's not to be bossy pants or to be inquisitive. It's, hey, Joe, right? It's Kari. I'm calling from, let's just pick Friends of the Teton River, right? So when we're calling on welfare checks and we're just calling to touch base with folks, you can ask them, again, based on your relationship, what does this look like in terms of how you're choosing to engage with philanthropies right now, right? And they're going to tell you, right? If you have a relationship with them, they're going to tell you. And you're not asking because you're trying to be Machiavellian and get in. You're asking because you care. But that's also going to give you an idea as to whom else they may support, right? And that's just important in terms of good knowledge from your donors. All right, next, you guys are getting good with your hands. So I want to see how many of us actually do this right now. How many of you actually have donor portfolios assigned to you and or your executive director and or your board members right now? Please raise your hands. Makes me happy. Okay, good. Yay, yay, and yay. Okay, so for those of you that don't, here's a couple different definitions, right? Donor portfolio is, again, a fancy word for, we have taken a look at all of our donors and we have made assignments to particular people as to who is going to take care of these donors, right? Taking care means that they are regularly interacted with. Taking care means that this person eventually will be the solicitor, right? Or the asker for the gift. Taking care means that these people have a specific person who is thanking them, right? So it literally can be that simple. as we get more sophisticated in this work, it's every single person who is in a portfolio has a plan, right? There is actually a plan that goes along with when I'm going to be talking to Joe about this subject, when I have sent an email, when they have been invited to, when they have participated in, when they have been engaged, what we're going to ask them for and when, right? So that's a donor portfolio. For those of you who haven't done this, it's a great opportunity for you to be looking at your database to say, who should we be putting into portfolios? And should this be the executive director? Should this be mine as the head of development? Would this be better served with some of our board members? What I would absolutely share for those of you who do have portfolios, and if you haven't engaged the board in this, high time, right, to be able to help spread that wealth. For those of you who have boards that are less enamored with fundraising, actually having portfolios where their responsibility is just the cultivation of the donor and the thanking of the donor positions you much better as a fundraising professional to actually ask and close when that time happens, right? So I think I know the answer to this for about half of you, but I want hands again. How many of you have a current donor database? Please raise your hand. Jackpot. Okay. And I know that you all know, who are raising your hands, a database is not an Excel spreadsheet. Awesome, right? So here's the follow-up question to that. When was the last time you were in the database? Were you in it today? Please raise your hand. I love all you. Can I take you on parade? This is excellent, right? So for those of you that don't have a database, this is the time, right? This is the time to be able to go and do some research. They are not cost prohibitive. I will make sure in the follow-up email that I send a link to do compare and contrast of donor databases that are out there. For those of you who are the smarty pants that are actually using your donor database, this is the time to make sure that it is clean, right? So have you created, let's just say, a kind of a checklist as to every time you go into the database and are in someone's contact record that these 5 things are done, right? If you've got that, great. I'd love to see a copy of that sheet, right? And I'm sure your peers on the call would too. But if you don't, we want to make sure that every time that someone is in that database, that they're doing the exact same things. And that could be that we're entering in the names, right? First and last, the way we want them. And not all lowercase, right? We're not AAML. That you've made decisions, are we spelling out or are we abbreviating addresses? That when you have had a phone call or when you have had an in-person meeting, that there's notes that are immediately entered. Immediately means 24 hours after the meeting, right? That you're regularly pulling reports and queries so that your board is up to date on who are donors or who are members so they can be appropriately thanking. Okay, so there's some homework for you. How many of you feel like you could write a novel right now on all of your programs? Please raise your hand. Oh, look at that one. Okay, well, good. That means you guys are in the right spot, right? Good fundraisers. If you're new, if you have just been promoted into this role, or if you really don't feel like you've got the best handle on programs, this is the time to dive in so that you learn, right? Consider this professional development for you. Again, the more you know, the better prepared you are to have conversations with donors about what you do and how their dollar can move mission forward. How many of you feel comfortable right now that your website is the only place you're open for business? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so folks, we got some work to do, right? Love the fact that a good 7 of you feel pretty comfortable with this. I hate that it's taking, right, what we're having to work through right now in order to be able to get us to this space. But this is the time, right? For the foreseeable future, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever that is, the website is the spot where anyone who is interested in your organization, from an engagement perspective, from a donations perspective, from a volunteer perspective, this is it, right? This is your storefront. So this is the time for you to be looking at this with a really critical eye to say, is this easily navigable? That's a fancy word, right? Rachel, that's fine, right? As long as Facebook's it, right? Some of us don't have, we don't have websites. But how easy is it, right, for people to get a hold of you via Facebook? It drives me absolutely batty to go onto some of the nonprofits' Facebook sites and there's not contact email information. Oh, and then they send you to the website, and then that website does not have staff information, or they think they're being sassy and they'll list staff names, but they won't give an email address. Folks, I get that for some of you, it's like, we don't want people like Kari finding us. I have other ways, right? But think of what that does to your donors right now. If you don't have absolute transparency on your website as to how to find your people, whether that is email or whether that's phone numbers, and I get some of our staff aren't frontline and they wouldn't be talked to, but then let's be transparent about that on the website. There should be a flash page or something that says, here's how to get a hold of our folks now, right? With regard to program or advocacy or fundraising, whatever that is. Is it easy for people to donate on every single one of your pages? Right? If it's not, that's the thing, right? Yay, Mahmoud, love that, right? Yay, Haley, okay? Like, let's not make this hard for people. And it's so easy now, we should be able to have a donate button, everywhere, right? So we gotta make this easier. There's a project for you. Next project, have you written personal notes to all your donors in the last year? Hands up. Sarah, Haley, nice. Okay, so, good. I'm sensing some carpal tunnel surgery in the rest of your futures, right? Like, it's time, we gotta write a note. And it shouldn't just be you writing them, but as the development staff, your job is to marshal efforts, right? So your ED should, again, portfolio, right? They've got some people, board members should be helping you with this. But if folks are unable or unwilling, and the unwilling piece right now isn't because people on the board, right, don't want to help. We got to meet them where they're at. They probably have their own fires to fight right now with regard to what's going on with their lives, health, right, security, business, family, all those pieces. But this is the time, right? So setting some goals for yourself as to whom I need to be following up with soon. Our thank you notes, part of the written personal notes. They can be, Lisa, they can be separate. Right? So ideally, and Lisa Wagner, everyone, is with Teton Valley Food Pantry, who's doing a phenomenal job of feeding folks in the Teton Valley right now. So Lisa, thank you. Ideally, I'd like them separated out, right? So when you send a text letter, and if you guys hear some hammering, again, we're figuring out our life in the house. My husband evidently decided now is a good time to hang a light in the next room. So chatting with him about that in a bit. So there's a chance for you to write the thank you note on the bottom of the text letter, but a handwritten thank you note is really something separate for another time. And it really gives you a chance to be able to share with the donor the impact that their gift that they gave a couple, 3 weeks ago or last month has allowed you to make it your nonprofit. So I hope that helps, right? And last little bit, and again, I don't have my phone in here again, so I'm not like Puss in Boots and the laser pointer with my phone. We have these wonderful little computers, right? Our little phones. So why wouldn't you want to take a little video of, you can either be chatting, right, with your donor, or if you're still considered critical resource and essential business and you're open, I know some of our animal shelters are, why wouldn't you want to go and take a video of what's going on and send it to your donors, right? A way for you to be able to keep in personal contact. We just have to be thinking about new ways to interact with folks. But if there is one thing, right, it's the phone. It's the phone. Whether you get them live or not, just to let them know that you care. So this is, I've heard this now, I started to keep a little cheat sheet, right, of how many times I've actually heard back from clients or for nonprofits that are not clients of mine, that I'm just helping right now, right? And when they've actually cared to make the call and just touch base with the donor, and they've either gotten a voicemail back, they've gotten an email back, or they've been able to have a conversation, and this is how that's gone, right? The donor has been wondering, again, because the donor cares about you, the donor has been wondering, I wonder how they are doing and how can I help? And instead, in our little head, right, because we overthink things, we have been thinking, we really can't ask them for help right now. That would be insensitive, right? So you might get that from a couple folks. Fair warning, right? Like, this has happened. So I had a nonprofit in Spokane who has been significantly financially impacted by this. They're a youth athletics organization. They are a huge events center, right? So they don't get rental revenues right now for tournaments, and whether it's, I think they had volleyball, lacrosse, and soccer that were supposed to come in for state championships. And they also have all these after school programs. They significantly hit, right? No programs, kids not there, right? The whole shebang. And so they crafted an emergency appeal to send out. And their executive director was nervous about sending this, right? Because Phil didn't want to be perceived as being insensitive. And we were so careful, right, how we worded that, knowing that we can't be all things to all people. And so he hit send. And of course, what we focus on, right, as good perfectionists that we are, is the one where we have some bad feedback, right? And he did. He got one email that said, "I can't believe you sent this right now. You know, we're all struggling and all the things," because we all are. Everything that that donor said was true. But that same day, in addition to the one email that Phil fretted about, because Phil's a good human, and he fretted about it, they had 27 new donors give. And it ended up being almost $11,000. So again, we have to be good people right now, right? Got to be good people always, now more than ever, but you've got to let these folks decide. So these, a couple little pieces of like action items for you, and then I'm going to go into some questions, right? So this is what I want you to be thinking about. You guys are already ahead of the game. Those of you that kind of have a set work schedule and have kind of figured out how I'm going to spend my day or my week, what I should be working on. I want you to set some goals, and you get to, if you have a number in your head, I want you to share it in the Q&A. I want you to be thinking about how many contacts can you make a day or per week? And you don't have to answer that right now. I want you to be doing some thinking about what does that look like, right? On the project list of things that I suggested that you might need to work on or not, how many of these could you actually complete by the end of April, right? Because my sense is, right, that we're going to know some things by the close of business tomorrow that we didn't know by last Friday, right? We're going to know things by the first week in April that we didn't know now. There's going to be some settling into what we have to consider normal for the foreseeable future. I mean, I guess by the end of April. And again, I don't know what that is, but if you've got things that need to be worked on while you're sequestered, if you will, then this is it. And so I'd like you to set some goals for yourself, because it's going to put you on a different trajectory. And the deal is, it needs to be a mix of donor interaction and project work. So for a couple of you that are on the call with me right now, and you're clients of mine, you know that an example that I'm fond of giving, I think, first of all, because it was scarring for me when I was in the field, but it's certainly been absolutely pivotal in terms of how I fundraised and how I stewarded donors. And certainly, I believe I wouldn't be able to consult today if I didn't have this as a scarring experience. So when I was at the American Heart Association, and this is still a best practice of theirs, again, when the world was normal and we could interact with folks, we were required to have 20 face-to-face visits with people a week, right? And when I first got there and I heard this number, I'm not exactly going to share with you today what I said in my head, right? Because that's a little salty. But I freaked out. Like, well, how are you supposed to do this? And I was living in Tacoma, Washington at the time. And then I moved to Denver and it was the same deal. But that number was still the number, whether we had staff in Helena, right? Or whether we had staff in smaller markets. You just didn't have that many people in town that were supporters, but we had people that we could reach via phone. I am not telling you that 20 is your number, right? I want you to think about what is your number in order for you to be able to be reaching out to all of your donors, right? So figure out your donors, figure out who you need to be talking with, and then do some division, right? Ideally, you would be deploying your executive director if you're the development staff person. If you're the exec, right, you'd be deploying board to help you here. This is a big deal. And this isn't a piece that's going to go away after we settle into new normal, right? This is a piece that ought to be part of how we do business. And when I say people, right, nowhere in here did I say that it's 20 donors, right? It's, are we having contact with people? Your job right now is to touch your donors first, right? To reach out and make sure they're okay. But as we move into new norm, when we're actually engaging with people on the phone, I'm going to guess there's volunteers that could use a conversation with you. I'm going to guess there's some board members that could use a conversation. There's probably corporate partners. There's probably community funders, right? There's others in the community that could stand to have a conversation with you that has nothing to do with money, so that eventually the conversation can be about money. So right now I'm looking at watch. Okay, so it's 1:50. So I've got about 10 minutes to be able to answer questions as we get ready to wrap up. Some of you might be thinking about signing off right now, so I want to give you this slide as you get going. This is how you find me, right? So right now I told you I'm in Teutonia. Eventually I'll wander back up to Coeur d'Alene. You know, when I can, you know, move around again. I am always available via that lovely number on the website. I'm always available via my website and via email. And at close of session today, I will be sending you the PDF of this deck. Evan will be putting the webinar on the website, and I will be sending you a link to my calendar. That link is free, right? And you can use it as many times as you need to for anything, right? Whether it's fundraising, anything else that's going on in your shop. If I can help you just by being a listening source for you, if you need to vent about something, right, in Cone of Silence, if you need help working through a strategy, right, you'll use that link. So hit me with questions, right? Right now is the time to talk about, well, what do you need help with regard to fundraising and how to be engaging virtually with donors right now? So if you've got questions, hit me in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer them live. I'll stay on for like, I don't know, a couple of minutes. If I don't see anything, then I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So again, this is the time. We had lots of questions yesterday with regard to special events, but you guys are pros. Well, hi, Jessica, how are you? You guys are pros at this, and so you might not have a ton of questions, or you're being shy and want to hit me offline, and that's just fine. So going once, going twice. Okay. Oh, well, thank you, Haley. Okay, Jessica, what's your question? I'm seeing my question is, where is it? You got to keep typing, Jessica. Oh, sorry, slow typer. It's okay. She's probably, you know, multitasking, right? Coffee one hand, typing in the other, which is what I should be doing. So here we go. Should we call, this is a great question, should we call major donors now and only ask them how they're doing? Yes. Right now, the first thing we got to do is ask them how they're doing. That's it, right? Let's get that through the list. Thank you, Lisa, for the question. You are then going to be looping back around with them after you guys have run numbers. And Lisa, I think you guys have already run numbers, right? But I want you to run again because then you're going to be able to loop back around with specific donors based on how those conversations go to make a specific ask, right? The deal about needing to reach out first is you're going to find out some things where it's like they'll tell you in the conversation how good or how bad things are right now. And so we need to, again, be good listeners. And if they said we're struggling, right, then they may be lower down on, you know, when you make the ask. We're still going to be making an ask to everyone. You got a business to run, right? We got people to feed. But the first thing we have to do is reach out to people and find out how they're doing. Okay. Hi, Sarah. Let's see here. Oh, our gala was scheduled for June 12th, and now our committee wants to do an event where we still get sponsors, host committee, but invite people to buy tickets. Yes, yes, and yes. Right. So unevents are things you can do that. There's been large national organizations that have basically said, hey, buy a ticket and stay in, right, for years. I just want to make sure that you've thought through all of the pieces before you go start to sell this, and be prepared as to how you're going to deliver on sponsorship benefits in a virtual manner, right? So oftentimes with events, sponsors are used to seeing name on invitation, right? They get time on stage. Maybe they get to introduce the band, right? They get to make remarks, whatever that is. Let's be specific about how we are going to deliver their marketing message virtually. In my estimation, they might have a larger audience because you might be delivering their information to your entire supporter group, right? Not just folks that would be at the event, right? So, Sarah, I hope that helps. And you can hit me offline if you want more data. Okay, so Jessica, is calling your donors to ask about their annual gift to get a feel if they'd be able to do that in a couple weeks? Okay. Also, if they say, I don't know, do I ask them to consider a smaller gift? Okay, so 2 good questions. I think that yes, calling to get a temperature from your donors is great, right? Because we'd be doing that anyway towards the close of the fiscal year if we hadn't seen anything, right? This is where you get to put on Kevlar, right? You're going to have some folks that don't answer. You're going to have some folks that might get testy, and you're going to have some folks that say, this is great, let's talk about that, right? So again, our job is to reach out to the donor. What usually has worked best for me, if they say, I don't know, rather than automatically going to smaller gift, it's breaking their normal gift over time. Right? So maybe if they are like, maybe you're used to getting $1,000 from them in April. Well, maybe they can't give it all in April, but could they give it in like 4 payments of $250 between now and the end of your fiscal year? Right? Like, I don't want you to automatically go to the lower gift piece. It's offer them the opportunity to be able to spread it out. They're going to be the ones that counter and say, hey, I may have to lessen the amount I contribute philanthropically to you this year. So I hope that helps. If not, you know how to find me, right? Okay, let's see. We have a larger fundraising event in the summer. Board's considering reduction of size of event to 1 day. For planning, what contingencies? We've not yet reached out to donors nor decided. So yay that the event is still on. That's great, right? I would start planning now for a what if we can't be there in person, right? Just so much better to have a plan B in your pocket, and you don't necessarily need to talk about plan B with those donors right now, right? I mean, having some sort of normalcy is so important right now. But planning for a contingency, like what would happen if you can't be there in person, and then not having to use that plan, is just so much better than you having to make a knee-jerk decision on what that might be at the last minute. So that I'm recommending that to everyone, right? And as you get closer, so since we're in Idaho, and some of you on the call are not in Idaho, but since we're in Idaho, like we're on lockdown for 21 days, we'll have a better idea, like, mid-April, what summer might look like. In some of your states, you might have a different idea in May, but just planning for contingencies in terms of, are we going to still have the event or not? Are we going to do virtual or not? Or what would we do to recoup those funds, just to have a plan, right? A plan gives you some sort of control. And you are welcome to find me offline to talk further about that. Okay. Sue, second degree nonprofit, how do you message when there are so many first degrees out there? So honesty is best policy, right? You would call that out in whatever communications you're sending, and that, hey, we're, you have been impacted, right? You don't have people coming to the nonprofit, right? Whether it's the historical society or the zoo or the art museum or whatever, and that is impacting you by X, Y, and Z. Nowhere in any of this are we diminishing the need for what you do in the community, right? And so this isn't about downplaying your worth or downplaying your need. You still need to send that because you have donors that care about you. Again, let them make the decision, okay? So we can talk about that offline if you want. Aaron, Health and Human Services Organization, we don't have any fundraising, which means we don't have development staff. working on fundraising for a specific program at our organization. How should I start making asks without any past donors? And just reach out to the community via social media. Oh, Erin, there's so much to say about this. And I've got like a hot 30 seconds for this. I think the first thing that you can do is certainly share the need, right, on social media. I think the next, I don't know whether you have a board of directors. I'm going to guess so, because in order to be legal, you have one. One of the first tenets of being a good board member is for board members to participate in fundraising. And what that looks like is bringing their connections to bear, right? Their network to bear for the organization. And so one of the first steps is going to be a sit down with the board to have them share their connections with you and to be able to have them start making introductions so you can start sharing the story. Right? So that's piece one. There's more. Hit me offline and book an appointment with me and we can talk through more of it. So it's amazing how fast an hour goes, right? So here we are. This will be, again, posted on the Idaho Nonprofits site. I have absolutely no editing ability in my limited tech portfolio. So you're going to hear all the stuff, right? You're going to hear the husband hammering. You're going to have my off-topic tangents, but the whole thing will be there. And I'll also be sending you a PDF of the slide deck. So as I sign off, please know how grateful I am for the work that you do in this sector. Please consider me a resource as we figure out what our new norm is, and please take care of yourselves during this time. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.